anything. So I've shut down, cleared all the history, closed browse. Okay. And, emptied all my history and rebooted, and I'm doing it again. I don't know what's going on. It's the first time it's happened in a while. Are you still there?
Yeah, I think we have no new entries in a little while, and how many? 7, 8 members on. So if you want to get started, I don't know if we'll have any public comments. I see Haley's on from Senator Sanders' office.
Okay.
Hi, I'm just listening in. It's been a long time since I've joined a meeting, so just wanted to re-engage, but no comments or questions. Thanks.
Welcome, Haley.
Okay, well, I guess we can get started. Apologies for my lack of connectivity here. I'm going to keep working on it. I can't see who's in attendance, but welcome everyone. This is the Vermont Citizens Advisory Committee on Lake Champlain's future October meeting. Tonight we have a agenda with the first introduction by Matt Vaughn on some very interesting real-time data work he's doing in a new website the Basin program and staff has set up. And then a discussion about public access and the recreation economy with Jackie Dagger, who's the program manager for the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative. And then with Carrie Thomas, who's the executive director of the Northern Forest Canoe Trail, to talk about recreational access, connectivity, networking with diverse communities, and what's in store, hopefully, with the additional funding that's been appropriated for significant additional outdoor rec opportunities. And then Jim Brangen's going to give us an update on a recent film that was produced by the Forest Service, I think, for the Champlain Adirondack Biosphere Network. And then we'll follow up with discussion, questions, and plan for our next meeting. Katie, can you tell me, is there anyone else from the public that's a non-CAC member?
Just some Basin program staff. Colleen's here, Lauren, Matt, obviously. That's it.
Terrific. Then I know we heard from Haley, and I don't know if Haley has any updates from Washington, from your insights on program on the CAC's initiatives, or
not a whole lot. We did pass an infrastructure bill in the Senate, but that's closely tied, in Senator Sanders' opinion, to the reconciliation bill. Probably what would be of most interest to this group are provisions, related to water infrastructure and also a climate conservation corps. So Bernie's still hard at work advocating for that. And then just today, we did see the Senate Appropriations Committee put out the appropriations bill for the Interior, which would probably have most of the funding that you're interested in. I have not delved into it yet, but I'm happy to send along any highlights there. I think that's probably it.
Okay, thank you. Our action item, do we have a quorum?
Yes.
We do, okay. So our action item is to review and vote on the draft meeting minutes for our September meeting. Katie sent that out a week or so ago, and I hope you have had a chance to review it. And if so, would would love a motion to accept those minutes and then have a discussion on any revisions or edits.
So moved.
I can't see who that was, so Katie, I presume you've got that.
It's
Yeah.
Carol. Maybe.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I can second. Oh, sorry.
Terrific. Any discussion on those minutes? Any comments or revisions?
Wayne has a
Okay.
hand up.
Yeah, Mark, I'm not sure you got a quorum to pass the meeting minutes because I was absent last meeting and Jeff was too, so I'm not sure if you got the numbers.
Oh, got it. Thanks. Yeah, that means we only have 5 or 6 other members. We can hold those to our next meeting then.
Okay.
But are there any comments or revisions at this point? Anybody that did attend and could comment on them?
Yeah, this is Hillary. I just wanted to say that I've just been appreciating how thorough the minutes are. So thank you for that.
They are.
Thanks
really
for
great.
that feedback. I was not sure how it was going, so glad to know that's the right level.
No, I think they're great, and if someone wanted more, our meetings are recorded. So I think it's excellent for our distribution and for posting on the website. So, all right, well, we'll hold those until next and when we have a quorum. So our first agenda item is a presentation from Matt Vaughn on a new website and science blog that he's developed with staff that has real-time inputs from some of the monitoring equipment that's in the basin. I had the chance to see this in Matt's presentation to the steering committee. So I'll imagine as he shares it with you and continue to try to get logged on. And so I can see it with you. But Matt, you can take it from here, and I will let you respond directly to any questions or comments of the committee. Okay?
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Mark. Good luck
Thanks.
connecting. Hey everyone, I'm Matt Vaughn. I work for the Lake Champlain Basin program. And yeah, I was, Mark and Katie asked me to just present on a few things we have going on. And I'll be really brief here. It's just kind of a quick show and tell. And I'll start just from a blank, web browser here, because we try to make these links really easy to remember. So if you go to data.lcbp.org, it'll take you to our new real-time data portal. And this is under development, and it's being improved all the time, but this is a start of something that we think could be pretty useful to partners like you. So this is a home for all, or really any and all real-time data that's being collected in the Lake Champlain Basin. It's not anywhere close to comprehensive, but I've included what I can so far. And a lot of this data is from the U.S. Geological Survey, which you can find in real time on their website. So for example, if you want to know the discharge right now on the Winooski River, you can do that at USGS and find that pretty easily. But it's not as easy to find all of the data for Lake Champlain or for Lake Champlain tributaries all in one place and see what's going on kind of with the ecosystem as a whole. So that's one of the goals of this site. So Lake Champlain level, for example, how high or how low is the lake? If you go to data.lcbp.org, you can see that in real time. So for example, this is a graph of Lake Champlain surface elevation for the past 30 days. And all these plots are interactive. So if you hover over here, you'll see the data points for 4 stations. These are US Geological Survey stations, Port Henry, Burlington at the Richelieu River at the outlet, and north of Whitehall, New York. So 4 lines, and this is for 30 days, so it's kind of all compressed together. But if we just kind of look at more recently, you can see the rains that came in over the weekend are rising the lake, and really all of the stations. And you can kind of zoom in on the past few days, and you can also zoom in this way and see a pretty fine detail every 15 minutes what the lake level was throughout, you know, different geographic areas. So that's a pretty simple graph. The other thing you can do is kind of turn layers on and off. So if you wanted to look at Port Henry alone, you could double click on Port Henry and see what's going on there, and then you can reset the graphs there, just like so. So I'll keep scrolling down here. Another thing I brought in is water temperature, and these are water temperatures measured in the same 3 places, or 3 of the 4 places I just showed you. And you can see these big wiggles are kind of day to night changes in water temperature. And again, you can see the rain over the weekend has been dropping lake water temperature just a little bit, but it's enough to see in these graphs. So if you're an angler or want to know what's going on with water temperature, this is a good place to come look, because it brings it all into one place. And then more data. This is on Lake Champlain tributaries. So I brought in 19 of the lake's major tributaries here. And when I say major, these are the ones that are closest to the lake itself. There are more that are monitored up in the sub watersheds, and I'm going to work on bringing that in later. But for now, these are kind of the main ones that drain to the lake. I apologize for the background noise. My toddler's trying to offer me imaginary ice cream. In a little bit, buddy. So again, you can see just over the weekend, a huge uptick in discharge. The Winooski River is here, of course, our largest tributary, that's on top. And you can see all 19 tributaries. If you want to kind of zoom in on one of the smaller ones, like Little Au Sable, you could zoom in and see what's going on. Just 30 cubic feet per second there, much smaller than something like the Winooski. But again, you can double click on these layers, turn them on and off, explore, and you can kind of see what's going on an ecosystem level with water moving into the lake. Again, this is always, or not always, for the past 30 years, really been available from the U.S. Geological Survey. This is bringing it into one place so you can see it on one graph and interact with it and learn from it. And one more, also I added a map here. If you want to see where those tributary stations are located, you can kind of see for the Au Sable. Actually, let's go to Vermont since you're at Vermont CAC. Let's see, what is this? Winooski. So you can zoom in and see where that station is located on the Winooski River, for example, and then zoom out and look at the other ones. So next here, this graph is a combination of all of the tributary discharge measurements. So I'm adding all 19 tributaries. You can see just a quick summary of how much water is moving into Lake Champlain every 15 minutes. So it's pretty cool thing to think about. And I mean, just looking at the past few weeks, a takeaway is that there's not a lot of water out there right now. It's been very low, very dry. This again is showing you the uptick over the weekend that brought us up to 9,500 cubic feet per second moving into the lake. That's still really quite low. It's not terribly high even for one of our major rivers. So, and that's again for all 19 major tributaries combined. So I'm planning to add more analyses and computations using the data that's available and bring it in, into useful formats like you see here. I'm also interested in bringing in some weather data, so it can be kind of like weather and precipitation and rivers and all these things kind of in one place for people to see and learn. The other thing that really the motivation for building this in the first place was to display real-time buoy data. And I moved this down to the bottom of the page because the one buoy that was on here has now been taken out for the season. So what I'm going to show you is not real-time data because the buoy is not in the water, but this is an example of what has been shown all field season, or all summer throughout part of the fall. There was a buoy deployed at near Valcour Island and the main lake here. There's a map of where the buoy has been located right there. And we were showing the latest weather conditions, air temperature, wind speed, wind direction, relative atmospheric pressure. These are things that anglers and boaters really use all the time. And SUNY Plattsburgh and LCRI team were displaying this data online for several years, and they've handed off to us now. So these are, like I said, the latest conditions here, and then these are graphs of the past 30 days of those same parameters: air temp, pressure, wind direction, and wind speed. And again, you can zoom in on these, and they're interactive, so you can see what happened yesterday or the day before. And then there's also water temperature profiles being taken at this buoy. So every meter from the surface down to the bottom, and in feet here, just over 160 feet deep. And you can see, you know, where the thermocline is and when the storm comes through. Again, this is not real time. This is ending on the end of September, just about. But you can see what's going on with the water columns of the lake. And this is a tool that we're hoping to use to teach people about more about lake science. Now, I said this is the motivation for us to build this was this buoy data. And part of the upgrade to the Lake Champlain Basin Program long-term monitoring program is that we'll be deploying 2 more buoys they've been purchased, but we couldn't quite get them in the water this season because of supply chain delays. But in the spring, we'll be deploying an additional buoy in Mallett's Bay and a paired one in the Lamoille River. And so when those are deployed in the spring, this will be the home for that data as well. So by the springtime, you'll be able to go to data.lcbp.org, see what's going on with our rivers, with our lake level, with the temperature of the water, with the nitrogen levels, with the pH, several other water quality parameters in multiple locations. So yeah, we're just hoping to build this up from there. Why don't I take any questions on this, if there are any, and then I'll move on to the next topic after that. Lori.
Thanks, Matt. This sounds wonderful. I'm just wondering, this is live now?
Yep.
Okay, when I plugged in the URL that you gave us, I did not get to the same place. I'll follow up with you offline.
So data.lcbp.org. I'm doing it fresh here, and that hopefully should work.
Oh, it's data dot. I did data at. Okay.
Data dot. Yep.
Data dot. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And that is, so data, that URL will kind of bounce you to another site. It just redirects you to this one. And so that's because it's easy to remember. So data.lcbp.org. In case you're out on a boat and want to check your phone, that's what you can go to.
Perfect. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Sure. Wayne.
Yeah, Matt, really quick question. I watch the water levels of the lake on a pretty regular basis. Does it show, Whitehall, New York shows that the water level is lower than the other locations? And I'm just kind of curious what the reason for that, with being at the far southerly point with everything flowing north.
Yep, I know. And I don't know of a definitive reason. I know it can be lower because of the wind can push the water north. That's kind of, when there's a southerly wind, it can kind of make an angle of the water. And I think that is in effect. Beyond that, I don't know. These are not large differences. I'm looking at temperature looks. And sometimes it is higher, sometimes it's lower. And I think it's mostly related to wind direction and wind speed. Go ahead, Hillary.
I was just curious, I'm so excited about this. This is great. If we were looking for specific data for, let's say, the Meadowy River, would it link then back into like the USGS site for more information, or is it all here on this sort of site?
Sure. Yeah, so for the USGS data, all I'm doing is I wrote a program that says, hey, USGS, give me that data, and it just gives me whatever they've collected. So Meadowy here, if you want to double click on that, it's right there, and you can compare it to what else is going on. I also have a link here to the US Geological Survey site, and that has all of the USGS data. It's a little bit more, I don't know, bloated maybe is the word. There's a lot to it. So it's, if you're looking for Lake Champlain data only, maybe our site will be better. But there's a ton of data on the USGS as well. So that link will bring you to the entire nationwide network. But if you, I mean, what I do, Hillary, is I go Meadowy USGS, and then there you are.
Yeah.
And that will have all the data since it started, which I think was in 1990 or so.
Yeah, I guess that was sort of my question, was if I like clicked on the Meadowy data, would it take me to this site? But
right. No, yeah, I would just Google Meadowy USGS and then you'll find it there. Yeah,
okay.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
And here it is. And you can download all the data going back to 1990 and
yeah.
Statistics and things like that.
Yeah.
But if there would be something that would be helpful to you in your work that you can think of that you want me to add to this, please let me know, because I'm trying to think of how this could be useful.
Okay.
So
that's great. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions on this? All right, well, I'll move on to the next topic, which is the new Lake Champlain Basin Program Science blog. So I'll just type it in again. It's lcbp.org/science blog with a dash in it. Okay, and then this is our new home for short communications on science in the Lake Champlain Basin. So we've realized over the past few years, when we give the presentations on the outcomes of the research that the Basin program has supported, there is a bit of a disconnect, not necessarily in having the information available, because we're always able to link to technical reports, but just getting it from our work and our partners that we're supporting to the minds and the hands of the people who are doing the work in the basin. So what we're trying to do here is bridge that gap by creating short, digestible blog posts that summarize very briefly what the main points of the research that we've supported are. So for example, so we have just a few, early launch posts here, with the first one's just explaining what this blog is. And then the other two are on research studies that the Basin program has supported. So for example, a survey of cyanotoxins and mercury contamination in Lake Champlain fish. You can open this up, and all of these we're gonna aim to have them take less than 4 or 5 minutes to read. So they're supposed to be very, very brief with only the main points. And this is, again, to bridge that gap between you all and our partners in their very busy lives and busy work, who probably don't have time to open up a 100 or 200 page technical report with a million graphs and everything that's going to be a barrier to their knowledge and their practice. We're just kind of taking bullet points and saying, here are the main points of the study, and here are some takeaways and needs for future work, and that's it. Here's a link to the full report if you want to learn more. So we're going to aim to do one post about every 1 or 2 months here, and the audience for this is really people who have a keen interest in Lake Champlain Basin issues, and people who are doing the work to clean up and to restore Lake Champlain and its ecosystem. It's not really geared toward the general public, although of course they're welcome to read and learn from these blog posts. But we're not starting with the introductory material. We're kind of jumping right in with the assumption that there's some level of understanding with basic issues, and for example, that the reader knows what a cyanobacteria bloom is, and that they know what mercury contamination is and where it might come from. So we're really starting with, here are the key things that we think are important for you to know as as a worker, as a partner in the Lake Champlain Basin, based on the research that we've supported. So we're really excited to put this out. We're hoping it's going to be a way for our partners to learn about what's been going on and what we've learned over the past several years with the research that we've supported. Any questions on the blog or the goals of this home for science here?
Yeah, I just think it's going to be a fantastic resource. Thank you for doing it. I'm really thrilled. And in the past, as somebody who's had to try and write the synopsis on some of these reports to share with others, I'm thrilled that you're doing
there you
it.
go.
Again, I think it'll be a really useful tool, and look forward to sharing it.
Well, we'll take requests, Lori. If you have a report, you're like, can you just summarize this for me? We'll just make a post about it. So that'd be great.
Great. I would say the pharmaceutical one, the toxin study actually would be a good one. There's a lot of interest in that, and it would bring people up to speed. It's one of the issues that keeps coming up.
Okay, great. All right, I've got that down. Thanks, Lori.
Sure.
Okay, that is what I had to show you. If there are no more questions, I'll leave you to it. All right, thanks all. We have Katie or Mark.
Yeah, Mark, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, my my mute button on my phone now looks like I'm muted. It doesn't. Say I speak, so I'm like having total digital malfunction today. Matt, thanks again. I agree with Lori. I think that the blog and the summaries and the real-time data once all the buoys are back up and running next year, it'll be really, really useful to have that ease of access. I know that the Basin program, the USGS site is dense, and there's so much, and unless you really are there often, it can be overwhelming. So thanks again for sharing that with us, and we'll look for more. So next, we've got Jackie Dagger and Carrie Thomas to share with us their efforts around our Vermont recreation economy and public access. We didn't talk about who might start. I'm not sure, Katie, if you had a conversation with Carrie or Jackie about, which one might get going, but I'm open to either or whatever you guys have decided.
I think Jackie's probably going to lead off based on the fact that her camera's up and she's unmuted.
Yep, that was the plan. Hey everyone, I'm Jackie Dagger. I'm the program manager for the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative, like Katie and Mark said. And I'm going to pull up a presentation here in just a second, but I wanted to start off by saying I'm primarily going to talk about VOREC and our VOREC community grant program, which we're currently running. So let me pull up my slides here. Give me 1 second. And all right, and I can't see you, but could someone let me know that you can see my slides?
We can see them.
Perfect, great.
Just need to put them in the present mode.
Or are they not?
We're just seeing the editing version.
We're seeing your notes, your presenter notes.
Okay. I'm swapping slides, but you can still see my notes. Okay, I am gonna see if I can do this another way. Can you?
That's good.
Okay, great, perfect. All right, so let me get started here. All right, so like I said, I want to use my time to talk to you about what VOREC is and our community grant program. So the VOREC stands for the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative. It was established by an executive order 1117 in June 2017. And from the beginning, VOREC has been a collaborative effort bringing to life Governor Scott's vision to prioritize and promote the outdoor recreation economy in the state by building partnerships and networks that will help promote the industry, grow Vermont's economy, and provide an opportunity to review Vermont state laws and policies to encourage the expansion of outdoor activities and businesses. VORC recognizes that outdoor recreation makes up a significant portion of Vermont's economy, providing 34,000 jobs and accounting for $2.5 billion annually in consumer spending. And it also recognizes that to support and expand the outdoor recreation economy, natural, cultural, and physical outdoor recreation assets should be wisely managed, strengthened, and leveraged to sustain and enhance the value of visitor experiences and the quality of life for Vermont residents. So VORC defines outdoor recreation as leisure, sport, and therapeutic recreation activities pursued outdoors, mainly in a natural setting. So really where VORC works is at the sort of nexus of outdoor recreation and resources like forests, rivers, and trails. So VORC's work and goals primarily support 5 pillars, and those are to grow outdoor recreation related businesses, to increase participation in outdoor recreation activities among all demographics, to strengthen the quality and extent of outdoor recreation resources, to increase stewardship of outdoor recreation resources and environmental quality, and promote and enjoy the health and wellness benefits of outdoor recreation. So what does all of this look like on the ground? So when the Executive Order 1117 was passed, a steering committee was also developed as a mechanism for identifying and engaging outdoor recreation businesses and other stakeholders in VORC. And that steering committee is made up of 15 members, of which Carrie Thomas is one. So she'll be talking next about her work. And perhaps she can provide some more insight into what her experience has been like on the committee. And steering committee members represent a variety of stakeholders in the outdoor recreation economy, including nonprofit conservation organizations, the Vermont Trails and Greenways Council, motorized and non-motorized recreation, and economic development initiatives, and other outdoor recreation planning throughout the state. So once the steering committee was established, one of the first actions they took was to hold a series of listening sessions, about 7 around the state. And out of those listening sessions came an action plan that lists priorities for developing the outdoor recreation economy in Vermont. So if you're interested in more information about those listening sessions or the action plan, those resources are posted on the VORC website, and I'll be sharing that at the end of my presentation. So once the action plan was developed, the steering committee identified really 3 big priorities that they wanted to work on. And those included, first, helping to establish a Vermont Outdoor Business Association to represent the interests of businesses, specifically in the outdoor recreation economy. And really, they wanted to have a place where businesses could vocalize their interests separate, but in collaboration with VORC. So the second action was establishing the VORC Community Grant Program to give communities what they need to develop their economies with outdoor recreation at the center. And like I said, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that community grant program here in a minute. And the last priority was hiring a paid staff person to provide dedicated support to the VORC initiative. And as you can see, that happened. I'm here. I was just hired this past April. So really, where VORC is at right now, we've reached some really big milestones. I came on board to provide more staffing support. We also received a huge boost in funding this year for the community grant program. So we're primarily right now focusing on the scaling up of that community grant program. And then we're also going to be refocusing a bit on our 2018 action plan to reassess priorities for the outdoor recreation economy and identifying some next steps. All right, so that brings me to the community grant program. And I'm going to dive into this, and then I'll pause for some questions at the end of my presentation if anyone has them. So the community grant program, just to give you a little bit of an overview, the grant program is funded with one-time state general funds. And like I said before, it's primarily to provide funding to communities for achieving their vision for what economic recovery development looks like with outdoor recreation at the center. The other like big thing that you should know about the grant program is that there are no match requirements. So that is a way to lower the barrier for smaller communities who might be interested in accessing this funding to get involved. Because some federal programs have, that require match can be challenging when there's not as much staff support. And as a little bit of background, so the grant program began in 2018, and between 2018 and 2020, we were able to distribute 9 grants to communities around Vermont and $300,000 in funding. So that brings me to our 2021 program. So like I said before, we've received a huge boost in funding this year. So like I was saying, in the past where we've distributed $300,000 over 2 years, this year we have just over $5 million to distribute. And that's mainly been allocated to us through the COVID relief funding that was passed. And so to match this increase in funding, we've really been focusing on the scaling up of the community grant program. So we've done that in a few key ways. So the first big way is that instead of having one full application, we implemented a 2-step process this year. So we did a letter of interest and application invitation process. And going back to lowering barriers for small communities, this was one way we really wanted to give smaller communities without as much staffing support the opportunity to apply with a low barrier to entry. So, writing a letter of interest, we tried to keep it pretty simple and just let communities tell us the work that they wanted to do and tell us that they were interested in the program without having to fill out a really detailed full application. The second way we scaled up the program this year was to add nonprofit organizations to our list of eligible entities who could apply. In the past, only municipal entities had been eligible. So we know there are a lot of nonprofit organizations that are supporting their communities and providing capacity for supporting the outdoor recreation economy. So we wanted to give nonprofit organizations the opportunity to apply. Another way we scaled up, so like I said, in the past, we've granted to 9 communities total. This year, we're planning to grant to up to 25, or to provide funding for up to 25 different projects. And that falls across several different areas that include equity, regional multi-community efforts, as well as local smaller efforts. And lastly, we scaled up by setting a minimum budget of $50,000 with no maximum to really encourage folks to think big about the projects they wanted to apply for and to encourage regional partnership building. All right, so that brings me to where we're at right now. So if you didn't already get it from what I said, we're sort of in the middle of implementing the 2021 grant program here. Our letters of interest were due at the end of August, and we just finished wrapping up our invitation for full applications. So we sent those out a couple of Fridays ago, on Friday, October 8th. And we received 104 applicants to the program, and of those applicants, we invited 37 to move forward to the full application round. And folks, those include people who are working on projects that are developing key infrastructure to support the outdoor recreation economy and their communities, projects that are contributing to workforce development, as well as projects that are connecting communities to cross-state trails. So the LVRT, the Vermont Trail, Cross Vermont Trail, and the Northern Forest Canoe Trail, among other proposed activities. while folks are working on their full applications, we're also planning to coordinate with some other state agencies and departments to review the letters of interest that we invited forward and provide some feedback, so we can have that feedback when we're reviewing full applications. So that includes coordination with the Agency of Transportation, Fish and Wildlife, and other relevant agencies and departments. All right, so I'm going to start to wrap up, but I promised you some resources for information. The Forex website is there at the top, and great resource. You can find the executive order that established Forex there, our charter and bylaws, and the action plan. You can also find a link to the Forex Community Grant website, but I also wanted to call that out here in case you're interested in more information. And if you do check that website out, I highly recommend watching the 2021 Outdoor Recreation Grant Funding Information Meeting recording. Has a lot of good information, and then as well as our grant program FAQ. And if you have any questions or want to chat about the outdoor recreation economy, I'm certainly happy to hear from you. So I have my contact information up here on the screen. And I know these slides are going to be sent out after the meeting, so you'll have my contact information that way. And if you feel like finding it sooner, you can always Google Forex. And my contact info will be on one of those web pages that I mentioned. All right, so I'm going to pause there and drop my slides and see if anyone has any questions. And
Jackie Daggett. You know her?
Thanks, Jackie.
Sure.
So I finally got access. Teams worked for me on my third restart of trying to get digital workings going. So thanks. Any questions for Jackie from anyone? Either, I guess, raise your hand or unmute and say hello.
Hillary.
Go ahead.
I guess I just have more of a thank you. I work in the town of Poultney, and they have a Forex grant, and they have done so much with it, including a video that was recently released that was absolutely fantastic about the town and the mountain biking that's starting there. So just it seems like it's a really fantastic program.
Thanks, Hillary. I'll have to look for that video. I haven't seen it yet. Lori, I see you have your hand raised.
Thanks, Jackie. Welcome. It's exciting to hear updates on this. And I'm just wondering, thinking about planning ahead, do you have general dates and deadlines for 2022 applications? Is it going to be pretty much a similar process, you think?
That's a good question. So this, like I was saying, this is the first year we've gotten this amount of funding. And, there's some rumors that we might be able to expect this level of funding in the future. I can't confirm that. But I think it does depend on what that allocation of funding looks like next year. Right now, I expect it to be similar, and I would definitely recommend, going to the website, looking for updates there, because that's where we're posting them. So that'll have the most up-to-date information if you want to start checking that out. We started in like May this year, so might start looking there in May next year.
Thank you.
Hi, Jackie, it's Mark Nod. It's great that it opened up and beyond sort of the traditional entities for all these additional funds that the legislature and the governor worked through. I'm wondering, in the application process, you shared how many LOIs, and I think you said about a third became application invitations. Roughly how many nonprofits versus municipalities versus for-profit entities were the applicants? Was it even? Was it skewed one way or another in this round? How did you see it? I know it's your first year managing the grant program, but be interesting to know what the sort of demand was for those additional funds.
For sure, yeah. And this is the first year that nonprofit organizations were eligible. So, and for-profits weren't eligible. They could be part of project teams,
Right.
but they couldn't be the lead applicant. So only municipalities or nonprofits. And I would say that we, if I'm thinking back, of course, there were a lot of municipalities, but we did see a lot of nonprofit organizations apply this year. I want to say kind of half and half, but I'd have to look at the data to be sure about that.
And I don't know, I guess maybe you could give us a general sense. Thematically, what was the focus? Was a lot more of the mountain biking trails, which I know were a number of the prior grants. Were they for infrastructure? How many might have been addressing the connectivity to their local water bodies? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I can't provide, there was a lot of really great projects, and I'm not sure I can say what the lead like goal of the projects were, but there were a lot of projects that were looking to connect communities to like a rail trail, like the LVRT. We saw a lot of people proposing improvements, like signage that would draw people into their communities from rail trails. We saw some folks thinking about access to water bodies from the rail trail. So like utilizing those for maybe a paddling access or an angler access. Yeah, if I had to say something that was sort of leading in sort of subject matter, utilizing those rail trails for outdoor recreation was up there for sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Excellent. Jackie, thanks so much for catching us up with your new role and the big funding program you've got going. We're be interested to see what happens with them, and hopefully find similar funding next year and network that to our community for, continually our action plan has pleaded with the legislature for additional funding for increased access to water bodies throughout the basin. And so any outdoor rec networks that can facilitate that is a win for everybody. So thanks again.
Great. Yeah, thank you guys for having me. And definitely get in touch if you have any questions.
All right, thanks. So next we're going to move on to Carrie. Carrie had a presentation for the CVNHP Knowledge Cafe that was developed in lieu of the meeting that was scheduled in person over in Saranac. And that was the meeting we hoped that we might get together with the New York CAC for a joint meeting for the first time in a long time. So we thought that Carrie and Jackie together could give us a good update on what's happening with outdoor rec and connectivity and the various outdoor rec networks of organizations and people around the state. So Carrie, thanks again, and I'll let you take it from here.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. Can everybody hear me? I know that sometimes my audio is a little challenging, especially in Teams for some reason. So great. If for some reason I start fading, somebody just holler because I won't be able to see you, and let me know that I need to speak up. So, I want to apologize to anyone who was at that meeting of the CVNHP Summit, because a big chunk of this will be repeat, but I thought it was important to bring everybody kind of up to speed on the overview of NFCT's scope of work, and then I'll talk more specifically about our work in the Lake Champlain Basin, and then talk more broadly about VOREC and kind of the community involvement in VOREC, and then some thoughts on kind of the future of outdoor recreation and that opportunity in Vermont. And, you know, NFCT is one organization among many who does all this kind of work, including Lori's organization. We're all different, but, you know, we all, I think that we are a representation of the partnerships and the type of work that is happening among so many outdoor recreation organizations and that are working to develop access, as you were saying, Mark, and information. So hopefully this will shed light on some of the opportunities for outdoor recreation in general around the basin in Vermont. So I'm going to pull up my slides for you. And if you let me know that you can see that.
We can see them.
Okay, great. So, you know, the Northern Forest Canoe Trail is all about partnerships and interconnected waterways of the Northern Forest, and the Lake Champlain is kind of a microcosm of that. So this presentation is really about that thought. Excuse me. The Northern Forest Canoe Trail, for anyone who doesn't know, is a 740-mile-long paddling trail. It traces historic travel routes from the Adirondacks to northern Maine. It was founded in 2000 with a twofold vision to create a destination for paddlers and to use that destination to help guide and build the regional outdoor recreation economy. As the founders set out to do this, the forest products industry had been in decline for quite some time. Rehabilitation of the regional waterways and landscapes was on many people's agendas, but at the same time, people's livelihoods were at stake. How could we maintain families and rural communities and also protect environmental health? At the same time, few people really took outdoor recreation seriously as an economic driver. When I started in 2014, so not that long ago, people still looked at me completely sideways when I suggested that this might be a possibility. But today, of course, I think Jackie, or maybe it was Mark, I think it was Jackie who quoted the figure saying, you know, the outdoor recreation economy is valued at $788 billion with a B in consumer spending in the US, and it creates 5.2 million jobs nationally. And also 17 states now have an Office of Outdoor Recreation to promote this industry, which also includes Vermont. So we're lucky for that. And with proper attention, outdoor recreation is inherently aligned with maintaining intact landscapes and healthy waterways. Creating access for people to enjoy these landscapes, it really orchestrates opportunities for people to have experiences that lead them to fall in love with a place, and their emotional attachment leads them to prioritize its protection. So with any luck, they will share that place with others, and then we begin cultivating a community of people who care for and work towards recovering and maintaining functional ecosystems. So with this big idea in mind, NFCT began laying out our trail, and from the very beginning, it was all about collaboration. Communities across the watershed came together to help determine the route and connect NFCT's tiny staff with local resources to develop the resource through the varied watersheds. And while the official route was completed in 2006, this was actually not the final concept for the historians and map makers who conceived of the original idea. They rather wanted to create an artery that connects all the watersheds across the region and inspires a network of water trails, and those trails that would maintain the history of access and interconnectedness that has defined the Northern Forest for most of human history. As an organization, of course, we did not imagine that we, with our tiny staff, would develop all of these trails, but that we could possibly help cultivate a community of people and organizations to carry out and care for the health of the various waterways. So our collaborations in the Lake Champlain Basin program, Lake Champlain Basin, they really represent that microcosm of what we aspire to and work towards in the entire Northern Forest community. And, a synopsis of our current body of work would be that we focus on essentially 2 program areas that can be distilled down to the word access. Physical access infrastructure is one element served by our waterway stewardship program, but then historic, cultural, navigational, and inspirational information helps people make the jump from paddling as an idea to a trip in progress, an experience on the water. And so connecting people to place fosters the love of the landscape and the communities that make our region so remarkable. So people in place, that program area, NFCT maps, our website and guidebook help people to find their way on the trail. We also host events to help people connect with each other, taking a proactive role in helping people and families get outside and discover the amazing places and the people along our regional waterways. I don't think there's been a single through paddler on the Northern Forest Canoe Trail that didn't come away from it feeling like the people were a significant component of their experience along the trail. And none of these activities could happen without partnerships and collaboration. But volunteers, of course, give their muscle to our stewardship work. They lead community paddles, they help out with events. Local government representatives and committees and organizations make those events possible, connecting us with local resources and the kind of interest and passion of any given community where we want to do something. And then outfitters and other businesses and business partners lead trips of their own. They provide gear to all manner of paddlers. And really, I think it's easy to think about municipal roles and to think about nonprofit roles and to think about the people building these trails. But these businesses are really critical for the ultimate end goal, which is to have people out on the water. If somebody wants to be on these waterways but doesn't have gear of their own, they need an outfitter. If they have gear but they don't have confidence in their ability to navigate or to safely understand the maps, then they need an outfitter or a guide. And we ran into some significant problems recently along the Missisquoi River because there's no longer an outfitter doing anything of significance on the Missisquoi. And fortunately, some of the municipalities have stepped in and started having kind of boat lending programs and that sort of thing. But these businesses are really critical to building an outdoor recreation economy, even just an outdoor recreation experience for most people on the water. Not that many people have the ability to do this on their own. We also provide paddler resources. One of the best parts of my job is helping people plan their adventures, but we also have a variety of paddler resources to help folks make their own way. Here especially, we have information about adjacent paddling trails and downloadable maps to help people discover side trips along the NFCT. We're always happy to point paddlers to our co-conspirators at the Lamoille River Paddlers Trail in the Winooski watershed and the around Lake Champlain on the Lake Champlain Paddlers Trail. We also, of course, are all about maintaining, protecting, and stewarding the trail. Maintaining access to the waterways of the Northern Forest is absolutely core to our mission. When the idea of this trail was first posed in a serious way, it became clear that one of the biggest obstacles was private land. Once the NFCT leaves the Adirondacks, the majority of the landscape that it travels through is privately held. And certainly the waterways of the Champlain Basin in Vermont fall into this category. After 20 years, we have 25 landowner agreements that help bridge this gap. However, we always have more places where we need a campsite because they're too far apart or portage routes are difficult to negotiate. and the access isn't adequate and the landowner is maybe not willing to allow us to make improvements. With partnerships from within each community, we continue to build infrastructure and improve existing resources each year. The partnerships really, we could go out and build resources all day, every day, all summer, but if we don't have permission from private landowners, if we don't have relationships with people who can point us in the right direction, if we don't act with integrity, we won't have that positive reputation that allows us to have what ultimately is a paper handshake, allowing us to provide public access on private land. Quality infrastructure and innovative design, of course, help mitigate also the environmental impacts of recreational use. We have the only waterway access focused stewardship crew in the Northeast. And these photos here feature some of the designs, including a self-maintaining aquatic invasive wash station at Louis Landing on the Missisquoi, wheelchair accessible moldering privy, which deals with the important issue of human waste management on the North Branch Cascades Trail, and then some solid stonework that helps ensure long-lasting access to the waterway and helps prevent erosion on the Missisquoi in Richford, Vermont. And then, our year-round staff includes a total of 4 individuals who work in the capacity of about 3 full-time people. It's a pretty small staff for 740 miles, and it means that trail maintenance really relies on this volunteer corps. We have 50 plus or minus waterway stewards who adopt a 10 to 15 mile section and commit to paddling it twice a season. Mostly they maintain sign-in boxes, they clean up trash, and there are eyes and ears. They let us know when something needs the crew's attention. And then our summer stewardship crew is comprised of a crew leader and 3 interns. So in addition to our 4 full year-round staff, we have a summer intern crew, and they have become a pretty important resource for us, but also for land managers across the region. For us, it's also an opportunity to expose young people to the outdoor recreation kind of from the other side, helping them understand what it takes to provide these resources for public enjoyment. The crew works in each state, and it engages in a combination of local work and we use a combination of local and visiting paddlers to support our projects. And it's really sweat equity through waterway work trips, which people come for a weekend. We feed them and we put them to work, and we try to give them a little bit of paddling as well to keep it fun. But whether they go into a related field or not, the interns, we hear from them over time, and we know that their summer on the NFCT has impacted their life in some way, almost universally. So narrowing in a little more closely on Lake Champlain, since 2013, we've worked with many partners and implemented 25 projects in the basin, and that includes 7 projects spread across the Lamoille, the Winooski, the North Branch Winooski, and the Mad River, which are not Northern Forest Canoe Trail waterways. So trying to implement that idea that this trail is kind of a backbone, providing linkages between many waterways across the Northeast. And then, of course, the partnerships are what has made these projects possible. And this, I think, reflects the resources in funding and skill and experience and local knowledge and passion that come together to improve the health of the Lake Champlain Basin, and then and our collective work as this group of organizations and everyone else who works in the basin going forward, and really helping other people fall in love with it and take care of it in the way that we do. It's not so much about NFCT as it is about this community of people working together to ensure a healthy future for our communities and our watershed, and making sure that people have the chance to be part of it, whether it's as a user, a recreational user, or a professional user, or somebody who's really contributing to the improvement of the waterways. So for us, what's next? We have a number of projects around the Champlain Basin that will either be done this year, or we are working hard to make them happen in the near future. Two that will improve the experience on the water. They're all going to basically improve the experience on the water in places that are not on many people's radar, or really in the case of hoping to see improvements on the Lake Champlain Islands in New York in particular. Thanks to COVID, I circumnavigated Lake Champlain instead of going to Quebec for a paddling trip, and had the opportunity to camp out on a bunch of different islands, and some of them are really wonderful, and some of them were really kind of rotten, and it kind of spurred me to look into how we might be able to help on that front. Hopefully New York DEC can be convinced, but maybe I'm sure we'll learn more. So in the case of Otter Creek, which there was some specific interest in from this group, I think we are working in partnership with Vermont Fish and Wildlife to formalize several existing access points that have not been improved on property that they already own. That said, you may already know this, but Otter Creek is apparently a very special watershed that has an incredible diversity of fish species living in it. And until recently, it hasn't really had anyone to take up the scepter of developing access to it. And Fish and Wildlife has a real vision to create the Otter Creek Fishing Trail, starting in Mount Tabor and going all the way to Lake Champlain. They want to establish access, ideally every 3 to 5 miles, to enable both short and long trips on this watershed, and as a paddling opportunity, with or without your fishing pole. It actually will be a really nice addition to Vermont's quiver of options. It really holds water better than many of the other watersheds in the Champlain Basin, at least from what I've seen. And so in next year, they've contracted with us to start on some state-owned lands. And they also have plans to support municipal efforts to improve waterfronts. So taking on those partnerships. And then, like every other trail in the state, they will eventually need to have conversations with private landowners to develop access along the way. And NFCT is just really excited to be part of this effort with our, waterway access focused stewardship crew, to be able to lend our support and expertise to this effort, and support access improvements. And eventually, hopefully, we'll see mapping and promotion of the resource so people can find it once it's all there.
It's Mark. Sorry, before you leave that slide, can you tell us what we're looking at? What do the different colored pins mean?
I have to confess that
Sorry.
I asked for this slide earlier today, and I got it at 4:45. So I haven't been able to delve into that, but I know that a lot of them are, I believe the green ones are existing access points, existing Fish and Wildlife properties, and then the pink ones, I'm not 100% sure what the ownership status is of them, but they are, I believe they're all access points, either aspiring or existing but not improved.
Got it.
But I would actually I'm gonna find that out myself, and maybe I will send an email to this group and let you know.
That'd be great. I know that Senator Bray was keenly interested in economic development initiative related to access and connectivity along Otter Creek, and it was some of his conclusions that include us, because I think you mentioned Otter Creek as an opportunity in the CBNHP presentation. So it's exciting for another spoke connected to the Champlain for great access, and great to hear that Fish and Wildlife is putting a lot of support behind it. We've been asking them for increased improvements for a long, long time. So
Yeah.
you can carry on. Thanks.
Yeah, and I honestly think that the reason this is happening now is because the funding is finally available. And, you know, all of these projects take money. And so the aspiration, I hear from especially Mike Rukowski, that the aspiration is very much there. The vision is really there, and the motivation to kind of highlight the diverse fish species in Otter Creek and use that as a draw is really there. And I think it's pretty exciting. And as long as the funding is there, then these projects, and then the kind of you know, it'll, of course, every project like this requires some careful communication and work with private landowners, like all of Vermont. So all of those things will have to take place, but having Fish and Wildlife as an entity spearheading it, I think is really great. So, you know, this photo is, to me, it demonstrates that, you know, some of the most valuable partnerships we have are with local public works departments, and they help implement so many of our projects by providing heavy equipment and like operator time to make it happen. But really, you know, it would be really convenient to keep our noses to the grindstone and keep working with these communities and just building access points and portage routes and developing maps. But you know, to really have an impact on the region's outdoor recreation economy, we do find ourselves at the table on a regular basis at regional collaboratives that help set the stage for land management, policy, promotional projects, economic development initiatives. And this is from New York to Maine. One of the most significant ones that we heard of course, is the VOREC initiative, and I sit on that committee, of course, representing, you know, technically recreation at large, but really paddling and waterway access is where, you know, my greatest expertise comes. So I wind up representing that as most. With the current funding available that Jackie was talking about through the VOREC Community Grant Program, you know, we have this unprecedented opportunity to help communities implement their vision to develop local outdoor recreation economies. It's way bigger than just waterway access. You know, like each individual project that NFCT completes, we use those to improve the overall experience of the canoe trail and the overall experience of access to waterways. You know, likewise, developing the infrastructure of each individual town, both those downtowns and their you know, trail resources or outdoor recreation resources, those will all enable visitors to enjoy each particular brand of outdoor fun. You know, Vermont has, of course, always had tourism. The ski industry has drawn people here for decades and decades, but if we want outdoor recreation to benefit the whole state, then we really need to, or even just more parts of Lake Champlain, we need to really develop a diversity of experiences and that are accessible to different tastes and different budgets. I look around and I see a significant lack of, you know, camping in a lot of Vermont. It's not, you know, there's camping in the wilderness, but a lot of communities really don't have that much camping. And that makes me feel like, you know, it creates access to a different budget, you know, that might be really excited to come, but isn't able to afford, you know, several nights in a hotel. But by kind of dispersing visitors across the state, we spread the economic benefit, but also I don't know how many people have been paying attention to national conversations around, you know, overcrowding in outdoor towns, But we then also prevent the existing places from being loved to death. We really do, if we want to build this regional economy, we need to develop more places to appeal to visitors and to have the resources to welcome them and you know, not welcome them at the expense of sacrificing the community character. I do want to thank all the elected officials who helped make this funding possible for the Aurora Community Grant Program, not just this year, but also in the previous years when there was, less money coming down the pipeline. It has been really clear that people have prioritized it, even with small amounts of money before. I don't have any idea how long the current level of funding is likely to continue, but I'm sure it's not particularly long-lived. But this grant program has real value for helping build our communities and our capacity to expand the outdoor recreation economy. And I think it really should be part of future economic development thinking. In addition to funding, many communities need technical support to develop their vision and a plan to take advantage of their particular resources without, as I said, sacrificing the health and character of their people and the place. Jackie talked about the number of the different barriers that we tried to eliminate so that more municipalities would be eligible. But all told, in order to be part of this process, you needed to have a vision and you needed to have capacity to implement on it. And I think that there's a real opportunity to provide some kind of over several years, provide technical support for communities who have an interest in this, but don't necessarily have current capacity for it. And you can talk about chickens and eggs all over the place, but I think that some people need some hand-holding to get started. There's also another really significant issue that I've alluded to earlier, the degree to which private landowners and volunteers form the foundation of the Vermont outdoor recreation economy makes it a little precarious. It's a potentially precarious place to start from. It's a remarkable cultural foundation that Vermont has, that in general, the idea of the public having permission to use your private land is a long held tradition. But as things change and as landowners change and people buy property that haven't always been here and haven't grown up with that tradition, become the landowners, we run a real risk of losing a significant amount of our access if we don't do a lot to continue to cultivate that culture, and certainly provide any incentives that we can to help promote that. And then kind of on the flip side, we really need to educate users about this stewardship ethic that lets people who are using these resources know that they need to respect and care for the resources, or everything that we have here could easily crumble. And we need to use our soapboxes in whatever manner they come in to make sure that we are able to educate the users that this is Vermont and this is the way we do things. And we don't need to say, or we're going to lose it, but I think that is kind of a reality. So as we go forward in thinking about the future of outdoor recreation, I think that we need to protect what we have, and what we really have is a culture of outdoor recreation and of permission and of neighborliness and respect. And if there's anything that we can do to build and to maintain what we have and increase it going forward, then it is to protect that. So I will. And also, here's my contact information, and you can certainly find that on the Northern Forest Canoe Trail website. And that's pretty easy to find on Google. So I will see if I can stop sharing my slides there. All right. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Carrie, thanks so much. It's Mark. I'm going to just let you, you can see people raising their hands or looking for comment or input. So I'm just going to let you do that. But thanks again for so much great information, so much great work. And certainly I'm interested in how we might support. I live up in the islands, and I'd love to help try to figure out how there's improved access for the connectivity that you're working on. So I'll reach out to you individually on that.
Great.
But I see Lori's got her hand up.
Yep.
Thanks, Carrie. That was really helpful, and great presentation and great work that you do. And I also, we can follow up individually, but I'm very interested in that New York initiative and the islands. It's really necessary. And we did a project years ago with Northern Forest Canoe Trail on the Missisquoi National Wildlife Refuge, and would love to collaborate again, particularly where our trails cross, or it really makes sense. But I'm wondering a few things based on the presentation. You noted that you have agreements with landowners in Vermont. Did I get that those are largely handshake? You don't have easements, and you don't own any land?
No, we own absolutely no land, and we we really defer to Vermont River Conservancy when it comes to easements, and we do have partnerships with them where they own the land and they hold the easement, and we have a maintenance agreement with them. But really, one of the things that you may have come across in Vermont and all over the Northeast is that people, they want their land, they want to keep it there, and a lot of them are suspicious of conservation easements, and they just don't want it encumbered. And so in order to make our trail happen, we've really tried to choose places that and relationships that are going to allow us to basically just say, hey, can we build a campsite on your property? Yeah, we hear a lot, my dad always let people use this land, and I'm happy to continue letting them use it. So it really does speak to that long-seated culture, and it is also a cause for concern going forward. But as an organization, kind of politically, we try to not talk about conservation first. We talk about access first, and if there's an interest in conservation, we want it to come from the landowner, and then we refer them to Vermont River Conservancy.
We've had the same experience, so we're absolutely in the same boat. So it's I just thank you for that clarity. I'm also wondering, you don't have any landowner agreements in New York? Oh
no, we do. We do.
You do.
It's just that there's a lot more public land in New York than there is really anywhere else on the trail.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Carrie, it's Mark. I don't see anybody else. I just had a follow-up question. We heard, and I can't recall whether you've presented to the New York CAC, and if not, they might, that might be another good opportunity for an update. I know some of them were on the CVNHP, and so maybe Vic or one of the others might follow up. But during one of the CAC meetings, there was discussion about access and the lack of livery services. And I heard you mention it too, and I wonder, it seems like a really great entrepreneurial time for that type of outdoor rec work and support. And I'm wondering what your senses are of the barriers and why those maybe pre-existing businesses aren't working any longer, or what are the barriers? Is it liability? Is it, what do you hear?
I think it's probably got a lot to do with the seasonality. It's It's really hard to say. On the Missisquoi in particular, I mean, it's been a couple of difficult years for paddling on the Missisquoi with the water levels. I'm sure you're all as aware of that as I am. And so that particular watershed is where we struggle. And, you know, if you can't float a boat, it's pretty hard to run a livery service. Right. And also staffing shortages. I heard a lot about that from a number of people. I was trying to recruit even just people to somebody to offer a shuttle service. And I talked to Umiak on the, and they just said, I can't even staff the shuttle services that I'm offering, you know, in my core area, never mind trying to staff something up there. So there's a real staff shortage, similar to what we're seeing in restaurants and really across the country everywhere. And it's a tough business. It's physical, hard work. You have to have people skills and willingness to schlep, and you have to be organized and trustworthy and reliable. And yet your business is intermittent and it's seasonal, and it's I've talked to a bunch of people, but I can't say I have a comprehensive analysis. But in particular, the Missisquoi has really been challenged with water levels and you know, dams and water quality. I mean, the water quality in the Missisquoi is a challenge also to promoting outdoor recreation. It's certainly getting better, but that doesn't mean it's there yet. So yeah, it's a really hard question, and I think it's very complex.
Thanks. Yeah, I sounds like dairy farming in Vermont.
Right. Well, and I also will say, you know, it isn't just Vermont. I've heard like the Allagash. There are very few new guides in the Allagash, and I think the Adirondacks is a little bit better, but you know, the Androscoggin in New Hampshire is seeing a shrinking of the number of outfitters that are there. So it's not just Vermont; it's really all across the board. The industry is really challenged.
Sounds like workforce training too, right? We need to build the next generation of outdoor rec outfit.
I say this a little bit tongue in cheek, but I'm not sure that it's not true. It's possible that the American Youth Soccer League is killing outdoor recreation on some level.
Well, I'll tell you personally, my youngest son just didn't go to college and flew the coop and went to Utah, and he bailed out of soccer and dove into fly fishing, and he just sent me a picture of his first wild brookie from a fly rod at elevation, and so he's seen the light or God or something. So come back. That's a good job for you. Come back, and we can put you to work sharing that enthusiasm. So absolutely. I'll recruit him and connect him to you.
Perfect.
Any other questions for Carrie? All right. Well, Carrie, thanks again for all your great work.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It was really insightful, and I'm sure we'll be connected again. So thanks.
Cheers.
So our next presentation is Jim Brangan for a quick update on the Biosphere Network and sharing a film that was produced recently, and I'll let him introduce it and take the screen.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So I believe I've given presentations on a cabin in the past, so I believe the group has a pretty good understanding of what the Champlain Adirondack Biosphere Network is attempting to do. I'll just go over real quick. We were established as a UNESCO biosphere by the United Nations in 1989 and laid dormant just up until about 2016. a bunch of stakeholders got together to talk about whether or not we want to stay as a stay designated as a biosphere. And turns out that there was enough interest to support a steering committee. That's about 14 people, and we have our own very own Katie Darr is serving as our coordinator. Katie's working with us 1 day a week. And last year, at about this time, the National Park Service sent a film crew to do a brief documentary on what's happening in the Champlain Adirondack Biosphere. So I will share my screen with y'all, if I can find it. Get it started on my browser here.
Jim, just make sure to toggle the share with sound button.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Okay, I've got it on my screen here, and there it is. Thank you, Katie. Here we go. Sorry about that. It's been a long day. Okay, sit back and relax and enjoy the show.
Jim, we don't hear the sound and it took a while to load. So do you want to start again?
Okay, hold on just a minute, please. One more time. Okay.
There you go. Yep.
Can you hear the sound? Okay.
Yeah.
We're working to bring together individuals, communities, nonprofit organizations, local, state, and federal agencies to focus on some of the sustainable development goals of the Man in the Biosphere program. It ranges from clean water to life on land to environmental justice to education.
We want the people that live within the biosphere network to have a strong sense of place based on their relationship to their host ecosystem.
The Wild Center is a science museum in northern New York. We work with high school students here in the Adirondacks, but also around the world to design and implement climate action plans in their communities and to give youth a platform to speak about climate change.
My name is Emily Alger, and I'm the Executive Director of the South Hero Land Trust. And we are primarily a land conservation organization based in South Hero, Vermont, right here in the Champlain Islands. And we also work on farm viability projects, working with local farmers and consumers to support healthy, strong farms. When it comes down to it, land conservation although we often think about it as being protecting a specific farm business, it's about protecting the land that that business is on. And the farmers are often the best stewards of the land. And they're very interested in seeing the nutrients on the land stay on the land. Land conservation really is it's a tool for lake protection.
My name is Melissa Monte Provost, and I've owned the farm since 1993. We're known as an agritourism farm. Hey guys. So you can imagine with this number of horses that we produce a whole lot of manure. Every year we continue to pasture the livestock in here all winter. Then we plant the sunflowers to draw the phosphorus out. This farm is pretty passionate about keeping phosphorus out of the water because we live 10 miles from Lake Champlain.
The communities on the Vermont and the New York side of Lake Champlain have far more in common than we realize. We're looking for the Champlain Adirondack Biosphere Network to increase dialogue, cooperation, collaboration between the communities on both sides of Lake Champlain.
Well, I'm Lou Brzee. I'm retired now. One of the founding directors of Lake Champlain Bikeways. Bikeways was created by the Lake Champlain Basin program. One of the purposes of the bikeway was to get people to see the lake. And the understanding there was if they see the lake, they will appreciate the lake and therefore be part of the effort to support the lake in terms of keeping it clean and that sort of thing.
Ever present, ever constantly stewarded nature keeps us in touch with our humanity and makes sure that as communities we don't veer away from the care and feeding of that which supports us.
My name is Brittany Christensen, and I'm the Executive Director of ADK Action. And we're a nonprofit that serves the Adirondack region. And right now we're in the pharmacy, which is one of our projects. It's a food access point in a community without a grocery store. All the food that you see here comes from farms within the Champlain Valley, and we really focus on low-income food access because folks that tend to have a lower income oftentimes work multiple jobs, and convenience and price are critical. And so having everything in one place really makes it a lot easier.
So right now we're standing just below the Cascades here on the Buoy River on Willsboro. We're about 2 miles upstream of Lake Champlain at the mouth of the Buoy River. And this is the site of a dam removal that occurred in 2015. So removing the dam here on Willsboro and the Buoy River opened up over 70 miles of habitat for spawning for salmon, and we've seen pretty rapid utilization of that habitat by our salmon here.
My name is Jonah Withers. I'm a fish biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, working on the Lake Champlain Fish and Wildlife Conservation Office in Essex Junction, Vermont. Since 1973, the partnership with New York DEC, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and Vermont Fish and Wildlife Service have been working together to restore fish in Lake Champlain with a specific focus on Atlantic salmon and lake trout. And that's ultimately our target, is so that these fish can naturally reproduce on their own and that the population can sustain itself.
I am attempting to catch an Atlantic salmon, the unicorn of fish. This is a very special place. I've lived in the Adirondacks for 30 years. Been coming up here about 25 years now, chasing these guys, and it's really amazing what they've done, taking this dam out here and creating the habitat for these fish to thrive. It's very special and needs to be respected and protected.
I think the Champlain Adirondack Biosphere Network gives us a great opportunity and excuse to work with these wonderful institutions and people and communities. So we found new friends, we found new colleagues, we found new partners. I think the possibilities are endless.
Well, there you have it.
Thanks for sharing, Wayne, or Jim.
My pleasure.
You're muted. Katie, you're muted.
Okay, like I said, it's been a long day.
Sorry, I did the camera and not the microphone. I'll just add that we are working on our distribution plan for the film. So if there are other partners that you know of that would be good to share this film with, please let me know. And I'd love to reach out to them. That way they have our cabin contact info also. And so we can start spreading the word a little bit about cabin. Lori?
I have a question about kind of how the Adirondack Biosphere Reserve is really integrated. As somebody who was worked on the designation many years ago, part of that work was initiated because it was pre-Basin program, and we were looking for this, coordinating entity, and we wanted something high profile that would focus on the Lake Champlain watershed, but build on existing entities like the Adirondack Park, et cetera. And at the time, the Adirondack Park was really, really essential to that designation because you had to have a wilderness core area. And then after the designation, it didn't really take off because happily the Basin program came into being. The Special Designation Act was passed, the management conference was put in place, and so the Adirondack Biosphere Reserve sort of took a back seat. So I'm wondering how you see this as really being very integrated into the processes that are going on now.
That's a great question, Lori. I didn't know that you were part of the original application process. Wow, congratulations! It's quite a trek to get that designation. They actually have to get the nominated by U.S. Department of State. So that's a very good question. How are we integrating? Well, the Basin program is providing most of the rocket fuel for this. So we do have some resources with Katie and myself. I'm acting as the co-chair. And we're looking at not trying to supersede anything the Basin program is doing, but we have found some issues that I believe that the Champlain Adirondack Biosphere Network can focus on. The first is youth involvement. They have established a youth committee that provides input to the work that the steering committee of Cabin is doing. But that youth committee is also expanding into being very active within the United States itself. Many biospheres across the country are starting to have this revival, and they're also starting to go internationally. So that part is really about capacity building to bring people from ages from, I believe we're working between 16 and 30 to the table and helping guide the course here. The second aspect that we're focusing on is climate change. We have a proposed climate change atlas underway. Professor Emmanuel Carter from SUNY Plattsburgh is working with Queen's College in Ontario to establish an online atlas that can help communities, institutions, and the states better plan for the inevitable climate changes that we're facing. Now that's brand new. Emmanuel is on a sabbatical right now, and he's working the crowd, so to speak. In fact, he'll be speaking to the federal partners group in November, and I'd be happy to set up some time for Emmanuel to come to talk to the Vermont CAC about that. So we're taking some, to me, relatively small bites and finding where the Champlain Adirondack Biosphere Network can play in the sandbox. But they're rather big topics that we're undertaking. So we won't be focusing on clean water, invasive species, and that sort of thing. But we're really kind of following this model of we're a network of networks. We want to get people together to talk. We're hoping to tag along with the Lake Champlain Research Conference that was happening in January. That's sort of in flux right now. We'll see where that all lands.
And I'll just add, as Cabin is experiencing its revival, so is the U.S. Biosphere Network as a whole. So there have been a lot of great workshops and trainings to cross-pollinate with other biospheres that are also getting themselves off the ground for the first time or back off the ground. And there's been a large focus on working with gateway communities and figuring out how to capitalize on this really special international designation in, travel and sustainable development. So, those are avenues that I think the Basin program doesn't traditionally work in very deeply. So I'm currently developing an inventory of current partners and, potential future partners that we can reach out to just to get a sense of what folks are working on across the basin and highlighting those commonalities and connections where they exist, but might not be known to each other.
That's great to hear. Thank you both. I think ecotourism, and so Carrie's the previous presentations were really timely. You orchestrated this meeting well, and I'd say the Paddlers Trail, the Champlain Area Trail System, they're all opportunities to bring in, and I'd love to talk with you more about this. Just one more question is also, when the designation happened, one of the things that we tried to pitch as a unique aspect, but it was relatively new at that time, was we were a much more populated area than other previously designated biosphere reserves. And that's why we had to really pitch also that core wilderness area of the Adirondack Park. That was really a critical aspect of getting the designation. I'm wondering, does that still exist today in terms of, either of your knowledge? Is it still a very unique aspect of the Champlain Adirondack Biosphere Reserve, or are there more that seem to be more populated now?
No, you're right. I was shocked when I was I'm developing some interpretive panels working with some partners at Paul Smith's and UVM, and I was blown away that the biosphere, if you pulled all the biospheres together land-wise, it'd be about the size of Australia, and in total, I believe it was 257 million people live within those biospheres. So it's really, which is 3% of the world's population. So it's a very small amount of people for a rather large landmass. I'm not an expert on biospheres, and Katie may know more about this than I do. But you're right. The ones that I've been looking at are certainly less populated than us. And in some cases, much less populated than us, and some of them are tiny. It's amazing. I think we're either the fourth largest in the country or the fourth largest in the world. So we have a rather large area, and frankly, I think that the borders should be expanded. That we should go all the way out to beyond the St. Lawrence and well into Maine. Because there's so much commonality between us and say the upper part of the Connecticut River and beyond. But yeah, that's we're definitely well populated. Thank you for the questions.
Thanks. Anyone else? Any more questions for Jim or Katie on the Biosphere Network or a really great video? I love to see South Hero represented with Emily and our local land trust. She's awesome.
She is.
All right. Jim, thanks again. I do appreciate the connectivity with the youth committee that's really driving a lot of the energy in the cabin and our presentation last in September about considering how to add more youth into the CACs and their functionality. And so I'm excited to hear what you're learning and how we might also learn from that and implement it with our work. And I love the trans-border work. My daughter's at Queens, and so I encouraged her to get engaged on that side of the border and bring it back. So thanks. We can move on to quick wrap up.
I had a quick comment.
Oh, go ahead,
Carol. I'm just thinking that maybe somebody from the Agency of Education could give some input about what their thoughts are for teaching and learning in the outdoors and for offering curriculum that could be picked up by schools, not dictating it, but or adding to what our educational standards are, Vermont educational standards for learning things that have to do with the outdoors. Because you're right. I mean, soccer and sports, lifetime sports, that's good. And so is this other whole group of things that Vermonters could be doing and Vermont children should be doing.
Yeah, Carol, I was a scoutmaster for 6 years, so we're singing from the same psalm book there. I'm absolutely behind any effort that would get kids out into the woods.
So I'm wondering, what is your plan to involve the Agency of Education with this?
And for cabin at this point, we haven't even gotten to that point. We are developing interpretive panels that may be used in high schools and colleges. I think that the best mechanism for what you're talking about would be through the Basin program, the CBEI project, along with some of the outreach that the Basin program is doing, in particular with some of the schools in Chittenden County, getting kids out learning about the lake and experiencing nature is in classes. There's Colleen Hickey and Stephanie Larkin have got a very robust project underway for that, but I don't know much more about it than that.
So if we wanted to see, where this is going and see within 3 years what will have happened, what would we do?
For cabin, for the Champlain Adirondack Biosphere Network?
For getting kids involved and educational institutions.
I see that Colleen's actually on this call, so I'm hoping she could bail me out on this question.
Jim, I'd love to bail you out. So, hi, Carol. I'm one of the Basin program is one of the partners on this Champlain Basin Education Initiative. Lake Champlain Committee is another, so Lori's actively involved. We do run an 11-day course for teacher training. So the goal is to, teach those facilitators how to get the kids out in the field. And we do everything from water quality training in the Adirondacks to taking them on farms in Vermont to bringing them to wastewater treatment plants. There have been about, I think the last count was probably 117 teachers or so that have come through this 11-day program. And many of our partner organizations, we work with a group of about 6 partners. They also do outdoor teacher and student learning, including Lake Champlain Sea Grant and Shelburne Farms right off the top of my head. So we're not affiliated yet with Cabin, but we certainly take students out in the field. And I know that Paul Smith's College is also interested in pursuing that even more. So it's late in your meeting. I'll stop at that, but I'll be happy to get back in touch with you if you'd like more info.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Colleen. Thanks, Jim. Jim, I was just also thinking that the Syracuse Forestry and Queens, the Climate Change Atlas might be a really fascinating tool to create some connectivity for, sort of a curriculum of sorts, an educational piece as they're developing, if I understand what the Atlas is all about. So be excited to see what happens as that evolves. I know it's a new start of a project. So thanks. We're a few minutes away from the end of our meeting. I want to remind everybody that November 8th will be our next meeting. I think, Katie, you can weigh in. I think that we're still planning to try to have a joint meeting with the New York CAC. They agreed to adjust their schedule to align with ours. And I believe we have climate change and soils as the theme, with presentations from Dr. Alyssa, sorry, I'm forgetting her last name. Alyssa White from UVM, and hopefully our state climatologist will return from, originally she had hoped to be able to present today, but had a family emergency she had to leave for. So we're hoping to bring her back in. So our focus will be around climate change issues, and between today and then Denise and I will be reaching out on action plan work. Denise couldn't make it tonight because of conflict with the Planning Commission meeting. So we'll follow up on that. I think we only had 1 or 2 CAC members respond to work on the action plan. So we'll send a broad email out and invite everybody, but we'll try to have a action plan meeting so that we have something to discuss at our November and something to present. So thanks again, everybody, for their time. Thanks for shifting your schedules from Indigenous Peoples Day last week to tonight. And happy fall. It certainly came in the last few days aggressively. And we will see you the 8th of November.
Thank you so much. I thought this was just so full of wonderful information tonight. Thank you.
I'm glad. Thanks to Katie for persevering and finally getting everybody together. So.
Yes, thank you for adjusting your schedules. That was the most important part.
Thanks again, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Eric says good night.